Fall in love with 252 exclusive offers on the Citroën range at Hugo Luna Motors today. Explore our impressive collection of Citroën cars and vans, where advanced comfort, style, safety and reliability all come together. Order your 252 today and take advantage of low-rate finance, a €500 deposit contribution and avail of a free home charger. Book your test drive today at hugolunamotors.ie. Citroën. For everyone, like no one.
Citroën. Encore with Claire O'Brien. Arts and entertainment for the Midlands. With Padder's Bar in Moat, Gertie Brown's Bar and Bistro Athlone, and the Cellar Bistro Strand Street Athlone.
Good evening and welcome to Encore, your weekly arts and entertainment show on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan. I thought I'd do something a little different for tonight's show. Every now and then I like to engage in what I call Encore on Tour and take the show out of the studios and into the community, into the spaces our artists and their works are in. So when I received an invite to the launch of the Cut from the Same Cloth exhibition at Dunamaise Arts Centre at the end of last month, I said to myself, this is a perfect opportunity to do just that. So come with me as I walk you through the Cut from the Same Cloth, the Fabric of Our Lives exhibition. When you walk into the space, you are greeted by a large tapestry, the focal point of the room. If you look to the right, there's a screen playing out video interviews with the project participants, talking you through the fabrics that hold meaning for them.
She has to get gift from her family and from her family-in-law. For example, it was gift from my sister-in-law. It's all set together, trousers, blouse, scarf. This is the scarf and the rida. It's all gifted to me.
Beyond that, there's a wall of photographs, showing the owners clutching the objects dear to them in their hands. And on the back wall, cutouts of prints are draped in a tiered formation to create a kaleidoscope of colours and patterns. Elaine, would you be able to talk me through the Cut from the Same Cloth exhibition?
So Cut from the Same Cloth really started as a public engagement project. We've been working in UCD Conway Institute since 2016 with people that have a lived experience of the diseases that we're actually researching. And these conversations between people with lived experience and the researchers really help to, I suppose, improve the research process itself and hopefully will increase the impact of the actual research that's being done. But since 2016, I suppose around 2022, we started to think about who wasn't in the room, what voices were we not capturing in these research conversations. And we really felt that there was a group of people, particularly in minority communities, that we were not reaching. And Ireland is a very different society today and a very rich society, and we needed to make sure that all that rich tapestry and that those voices were being heard within the research conversations. So we felt that one of the ways that we thought we might be able to do this was through art. And we've worked with Lorna Donlon, a tapestry weaver and artist, to help communicate science through art, because we can all find common ground on art. And it's a lovely entry point into a conversation. So I approached Lorna. She had been our UCD Conway artist in residence in 2020. And I approached Lorna and asked her if she would be interested in working with us on a project. So we talked to some community leaders, and we pitched the idea to them about the project itself, and we got them on board, and we really co-designed the project before we wrote a proposal to Research Ireland for funding. So that's really where the concept of it came about.
And how did you go about finding people in those minority groups? I know that from Laois alone you got 22 participants. How many minority groups did you actually manage to capture in the end? And as I said, how did you go about getting into those spaces to find participants?
So we reached 164 women who have come from 4 different continents and now call Ireland home. Okay. So they are across the Venezuelan, Muslim, Syrian, Kashmiri, Pakistani, literally all over the world, and they've now found Ireland as a home. When you say about community leaders, it's very important to reach that trusted person within a community to start that conversation. So we reached out to community leaders, and we literally went along to events that they were having. So the Muslim Sisters of Ahern, for example, and the Venezuelan community in Ireland, we connected with their key community leaders. We started talking to them and asking them if they would be interested in working with us on this type of a project.
And where did you get the idea for the mixed mediums? So obviously, as you said, Lorna was involved. She did the tapestry. You also decided that you were going to capture these women's stories visually, both with the video aspect as well as the photography. Why did you decide to mix different mediums to have a collective exhibition?
So I suppose it was important for Lorna. She's an artist and a tapestry weaver. She's fascinated by patterns that she sees in the world all around us, and that way of actually having something tactile to hold on to. When she talks about opening up people's hot presses, I have my communion dress, I have my wedding dress, many other women have the same. So we felt that the colour that was in there needed to be captured somehow. So we really didn't know what we were going to end up with, but when we started on the project, we felt it was important to build in these elements. It was important to build in the fact that not all of the women that we would be talking to would be comfortable having their face photographed, so we thought it would be important to have hands holding fabric, and that's why all of the photographs you see are of hands holding fabric. The stories that are told on camera, sometimes the women are showing their face in that, sometimes they're not. That was their decision, but we felt it would be important to hear their story in their own words and sometimes in their own language, and we facilitated translation and closed captioning for that. And then Lorna really didn't know that she was going to make this tapestry to this extent or level. It really developed. She really wanted to be true to all of the stories and all of the fabrics that she came across. So she actually wove every single one of a representation of each of those fabrics into the tapestry. So really the whole thing evolved as the project went along.
And I suppose some people might be listening to this and thinking, how is this relevant to the Conway Institute for the work that you do? Because this is an art exhibition. So how are you going to take what you've now found, and I suppose those connections and those relationships you've built, how are you, the Conway Institute, going to take that and turn it into what you do, which is the science aspect of it?
So that's usually the first question people ask is, where's the science? But Lorna had worked with the researchers at the very start of this project to look down the microscope, to look at the cells and the pictures and the images that they see when they're working every day with their research. And quite honestly, there's patterns everywhere. So immediately there was that connection with it. It could be a pattern that you see on a dress in a shop, but in actual fact you're looking down a microscope at diabetic kidney cells, for example. So she worked with each of the researchers to find those images, to represent them then on the fabric so they'd have something tactile to bring along with them and to show the women in those circles of conversation that we had. And I suppose now it's about building that, continuing to build the trust with those ladies. There was great excitement among the women that we met about the research. So halfway through the project, they were saying, we'd love to see more. Can we come and visit you? So in actual fact, we decided to hold an open day. At that point, we'd met about 80 women. 40 of them came along to the Conway to meet the researchers in their space, to get into the labs, to see, look down the microscope and actually see the cells that they were seeing and the patterns that these researchers were seeing. Yeah. So already these conversations are starting. And what we hope now is that building on those conversations, we will actually talk to people in these diverse communities about their community's needs. What do they expect to see from research and how they want that moved forward? So we really hope from this building trust that we will have those really strong research conversations that will have impact in people's lives.
And the art installation is going to be here in situ in Dunamaise until the end of October, until October 25th. Where is it going after that? What's the next stop on the tour? And then once the tour is finished, what's to become of these pieces?
So the next stop on the tour after Laois is actually Roscommon. So it was very important to us that we met women in the communities that they live in. So when we first met them, that's where they were. So it's very important for us to bring the exhibition back to those locations. So it's going to Roscommon next, and that'll bring us up until the end of December. After that, well, very excitedly, Lorna has been nominated as the 2025 RDS craft person. She's on that shortlist. That will be announced. The winner will be announced in December. There will be an exhibition as part of that judging process. We would love to see her winning that. Obviously, what we would like to see is this exhibition moving around to other places in Ireland, because there are communities all around the country, similar to the people that we've talked to. I think a lot of people would love to see this exhibition, and that's what we'd hope to do next, and to actually use the conversations between the researchers and these ladies, and hopefully men in these communities as well, and move it on to the next stage.
Why was it that you decided to go with a predominantly, well actually completely, female demographic for this project?
So it was a decision that we made very early on through talking to the community leaders. There are a number of communities in Ireland today where gender segregation still happens. So it was important that conversations could be had in a place and a space that people felt safe within. In any type of public engagement piece, it's very easy to get to the women. So we felt that was the best place to start.
Okay.
Our mothers, our daughters, sisters, we love talking, we love fabric, and we felt this was a really good segue in. But we now hope that these mothers and women are influencers within their family, within their community, and we now hope to talk to the men and bring them in and talk about the health in issues and conditions in the body that's important for them, and potentially that our researchers can have impact on.
So this art piece really was, in all aspects, a conversation starter, not just for the subject matter, I suppose, of the art, but you're hoping that this will lead to further conversations. And I said, what you want to get out of it is to know where you can help, where are the issues, where your work, where your research needs to go. Exactly,
that's just it. Because as researchers, we would have a certain perspective. We answer a funding call. We direct our research in a particular way. But is that what the person at the other end really wants? Is that what's most important to them? We don't want to get fixated on a particular question that may not have an importance or an impact for the community that it serves. So we want to know what the community's needs are and how research can actually meet those. And by having that conversation, hopefully we'll get to that space a lot quicker and with a lot more impact.
That was Elaine Quinn, Institute Manager of Communication and Education at the UCD Conway Institute. Up next, we'll be hearing from the artist herself.
Encore with Patters Bar in Moat, with live music every weekend and all sport showing on our big screens. Find Patters Bar Moat on Facebook or Instagram. Midlands 103.
You are listening to Encore on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan, where I've been taking you through the Cut from the Same Cloth exhibition currently in residence at the Dunamaise Arts Centre in Portlaoise. It sees the coming together of art and science, two areas that have historically been divided but have been proven time and time again to be inherently linked, something tapestry and textile artist Lorna Donlon couldn't help but see.
While I was doing my degree in cell and molecular biology, I was seeing textiles everywhere in lectures. So DNA is called the thread of life. There's DNA in the cabinet here that actually looks like thread. Mm-hmm. A lot of structures in cells have a sort of a textile nature. There's one particular process where a polypeptide is being fed into an organelle where it's going to be folded, and it looks exactly like a needle being threaded. A lot of the patterns of cells look like patterns of fabric. Almost like woven type structures inside cells as well. I was just seeing textiles absolutely everywhere. And I suppose when Elaine did put this challenge to me of how would we make those connections between the researchers and women, that idea came to me. I wonder, could I actually lean into this and create these sort of fabrics, colours and patterns? And would those colours and patterns of the biomedical research, would they talk to the fabrics and a cloth that women might bring along to speak about? Because there's so many different colours and patterns and types of patterns and cloths from different cultures. So I think that was just the idea that I had. And then as a practicing weaver, it was amazing to have the opportunity then to actually weave a large tapestry and sort of weave the whole thing together then. The tapestry combines my representations as close as I could possibly get to make woven representations of every single piece of fabric that was spoken about, and of all the research, the biomedical research fabrics as well. Those patterns and colours are in there as well. So it's a really unique community that's woven into that tapestry. And then there's also patterns woven, and the black and white patterns of the little squares that actually make up the QR code, which is another kind of a curious thing to try and do in a tapestry. And then the pattern of the genetic code around the border. So the different patterns of the 4 letters of the genetic code and the sequences that they make is also a pattern. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of challenged to try and combine it all together into the one woven piece.
You mentioned there about the QR code. So obviously you hand wove that tapestry, which is an old art form, and QR codes are very new, modern technology. Where did you get that idea to combine those two?
I've always seen QR codes as textile type objects. They remind me of weaving drafts. So when you are learning to weave, or as an established weaver, and you want to weave cloth with different patterns in them, there are books of pattern drafts that look very like QR codes, where the black square would represent a warp going over a weft and a white square would represent a warp going under a weft. So you could actually, as a weaver, read that QR code, for example, and work out, how would I actually weave that? Yeah. And what way would I thread the threads through the heddles on the loom, and what way would I then thread up the pedals underneath, so that those patterns of threads would be lifted and lowered, so that when I weave it, it actually looks like this QR code. Yeah. And tapestries as well are historical documents. I think of that tapestry as a document. And they usually would have, looking at old tapestries now, you can see things that are of the time. They are historic. There's a lot of information embedded in them that maybe wasn't necessarily intended to be communicated, but it is in there nonetheless. Yeah. And that was another idea I had, was that I wanted this tapestry to be of its time, and that the QR code would, I'm imagining in hundreds of years' time that somebody might be looking at this tapestry and the QR code will place it in this very much in this time frame. And it still gives me an amazing buzz that my phone can talk to the tapestry and something can happen. And I still don't really understand exactly why that's happening, but it's like magic. And I think that's kind of cool, that people can come and stand in front of it and take their phone out, and the phone will actually interact with the tapestry itself. Yeah. It's kind of amazing. So when that QR code is read, it links you to the website cutfromthesamecloth.org, which is effectively a digital version of the physical exhibition that you're in here, the photographs of the women holding their cloth, the research images and explanations by the scientists, and the tapestry and details of all the different sections of the tapestry and what was in my head. And there's also then a page, sort of a call to action for anybody who may be interested in becoming involved in the Conway Institute's Patient Voice and Health Research Initiative, which is really what the sort of impetus for this exhibition in the first place was, to try and get some diverse voices into the Patient Voice and Health Research Initiative. And this was an initial step of trust building between biomedical researchers and women from minority communities.
And there's a number of different elements to the exhibition. There's the tapestry, which has spoken us through. There's the photograph element there, which is capturing some of those textiles that the women brought, holding them in their hands. When you walk in and you look at the back wall, there's those sections of fabrics that were the researchers' contribution to the piece. And for the most part, they're collections of cells, they're different things they might be seeing under the microscope. How were those fabrics made? How did you get what they were seeing in a microscope printed on them and in those vibrant colours?
Yeah, so working with each of the researchers who took part, we would have looked through their research, elements of their research, whether that was microscope images, whether that was data, and selected one that would allow them to explain their research or talk a little bit about their research. And I had those, I then had to do quite a bit of work with the images that they gave me to maybe turn them into repeating patterns, or enlarge them, or play around with them a little bit, to see how could I best make this look actually like a piece of fabric that might be part of a garment, or that might be part of a curtain, or and having done that, then I would have sent that information to a company who printed them out on all sorts of different fabrics. There's some velvets, there's organza. The fabric that's printed on organza, which is a really light, airy, see-through fabric, is an image of a cancer tumour that was actually an image created by Dr. Amanda McCann, Professor Amanda McCann, who was the principal investigator on this project. And she was the person who, herself and Elaine Quinn in the Conway Institute, started the Patient Voice in Cancer Research Initiative. But she described to me a process where, I think she said it was called feathering. So having stained the sample of the tumour with those different colours so that she would be able to see different parts of the cells, she then had to go through this process of shearing off really, really, really thin samples, really thin layers, and she said they were almost like feathers that if a wind blew into the room, it would just be lifted, which is why we actually chose organza, because it's this very sheer and light and airy fabric to actually also translate that aspect of the actual work that she would have been doing. Yeah, so they are displayed then together. I would have had an idea in my head of all of these different patterns and colours, kind of all hanging together and all kind of bouncing off each other and all kind of talking to each other, which is what I've tried to do, hanging them in the exhibition as a sort of a one-off display.
Yeah.
Interestingly, tapestry weaving is very, very slow and time-consuming process. And usually people are a bit shocked at how slow it is. They can't believe that you would be spending your life doing this, getting so little done every day and having to spend such long hours. But the scientists in the Conway Institute, they kind of got it. I think they work in a very similar sort of way that, a typical PhD takes 4 years. Science is a process of very slow, iterative discoveries that build on each other, which is exactly what tapestry is like. You weave a bit, and then the next bit builds on that, and the next bit builds on that. So there was a lot of interesting sort of similarities, I think, and I really enjoyed that. That was a really unique element of this tapestry, being able to weave it as part of the Conway community.
Perhaps an unexpected link that you didn't expect to find there, whereas you said your kind of areas and the work that you do and the way that you do is aligned in a way that perhaps you didn't think would when you first started the project.
Absolutely. So I suppose I was there as an artist. I suppose I was showing the scientists a little bit about what my life as an artist is like, but then also as being a bridge for the participants who took part in the project to explain to them what life as a scientist is like, a little bit, introducing them a little bit of science. So it was very nice to, I suppose, having been an artist all my life and then also having a degree in cell and molecular biology, it was a real bridge this time between the two.
And you said there that not a lot of people get or understand why you would devote your life to doing such a tedious, meticulous thing. Why do you do it?
It's a difficult question to answer. I feel I have no choice. I a couple of times have actually tried to give it up because it is so kind of a ridiculous thing to be doing. It's hard to make a living, bread and butter on the table. But I feel because I can do it, that I should do it. And there aren't that many weavers in Ireland, and it's very nice to be able to continue to weave and to continue to do work to a very high as I can level, and ensure that I'm putting detail and thinking about the quality of the work and making lasting pieces. I think it's a technique that's a little bit different, and in a way I suppose I feel a little bit privileged that I actually have it in me to do it. And I have many years of actually weaving in my hands, which you would have to have really to tackle a tapestry like that.
Of that scale.
Yeah, and I just feel it's what I should be doing. So I suppose I'm trying to find ways that enable me to actually continue to do it.
That's something that a lot of creatives will be able to relate to, because that's the age-old thing, isn't it? We recognise that our crafts sometimes aren't, as you said, something that's sustainable for putting the bread on the table. And it's always that in between of going, do I continue to do this, or do I give in? Do I take a 9-to-5 job? And it's something that we hear year in, year out, especially now with the basic income for the arts being in question, that a lot of artists struggle to make that decision. But it's a feeling, isn't it, that they go, I need to do this thing. It's my art. It's my craft.
Absolutely. It's a real catch-22, because I think for an awful lot of artists, it really is not a choice.
Yes.
In fact, there's a weaver, Archie Brennan. He was one of the dovecot weavers in Scotland. And I found an interview with him recently on the internet where he says, tapestry weaving is not a career choice. It's more like a disease that you learn to live with. And I think that's part of the problem, is that artists, I think it is changing slightly, but they probably do struggle to get paid properly. You know, it's precarious. I know, like, I go from one project to another, and I actually don't know what's coming next once this one is finished, because it's very hard to work so intensively on something and also be planning ahead and trying to find what am I going to do next. I've been very lucky. There are a couple of initiatives that support artists and craftspeople, one being the Golden Fleece Award, which I won in 2021. And just today, actually, I heard that I've been shortlisted for the RDS Craft Award. Amazing. As an established maker. So initiatives like that are really important for makers like myself, because they offer validation, a sense of, okay, people are seeing what I'm doing, people think it's worthwhile, even if my work isn't flying off the walls in exhibitions or whatever. But it is, and the universal income for artists is a very, it should be rolled out. I really believe it should be.
I was really struck by Lorna's closing remarks there. Some really powerful and thought-provoking statements, especially around your craft being like a disease, not something you choose, but have to do, and yet again reinforcing the importance of the basic income for the arts. Up next, we'll be hearing from the researchers behind those fabulous hanging prints.
Introducing the all-new 252 electric range at Hugo Luna Motors. See our Peugeot E2008, now available in electric. This bold SUV boasts a striking design with sleek LED headlamps and a redesigned grille for a powerful presence. With zero CO2 emissions and 156 HP of power, the E2008 delivers efficiency and performance. Discover more at hugolunamotors.ie. Drive the future today.
Encore with Patters Bar in Moat, with live music every weekend and all sports showing on our big screens. Find Patters Bar Moat on Facebook or Instagram. Midlands 103.
It is Encore on Midlands 103, where the topic of discussion tonight has been the From the Same Cloth exhibition, curated by artist Lorna Donlon in partnership with women in minority communities across Ireland and biomedical researchers from UCD Conway Institute. Now, you may be asking yourself, what involvement did the biomedical researchers have? How did they contribute to the art installation? Well, luckily, I managed to nab Associate Professor Niamh O'Sullivan at the launch event to talk me through her involvement in the project.
I've been working there now for 12 years, and I'm working really in the rare disease space and trying to understand why, because we've gotten quite good at saying to someone, right, well, this particular genetic mutation is meaning that you have this disease. What we are still very poor at doing is going, right, well, now here's a treatment or here's something, because we know why, whatever things are going wrong. So my work is trying to shift the needle on that. And so we use predominantly little fruit fly, so the tiny, really annoying thing in your kitchen that buzzes around. In the lab, super useful. So we genetically engineer them so that they have the same genetic mutation as the patients do. And then we can, obviously we can look at things like, well, do the flies move as well or survive and things. We get readouts of how they look. But what's really important is that we can look into the cells that are affected. So in my case, we're studying neurological diseases. So we can look at the fly's brain. And yes, flies have a brain. We can look at the neurons that connect the brains to the muscles throughout their body. And so we can look in and see what is going wrong in those affected cells, even before they start showing symptoms or signs of disease. So helping us to really understand what is that genetic mutation, what effect is it really having. So we want to know more about the diseases, and we have had some nice results in the last number of years. So now we're shifting gear into a few of our models to see, well, we know a bit more about what's going wrong. Can we make the flies better? So effectively with drugs or with some other genetic engineering, can we try and make them better? Because that would help point us in the direction of some therapeutic strategies. So that's where we're starting to be at now.
And where does the art come into it? Because obviously you're coming at it from that very heavy science, medical, the researcher point of view. How were you involved with it all?
I think most of the researchers were a bit terrified of that side of things. That's not what we do. Lorna, so the artist who kind of drove all this, she met with each of us. We sat down, we had a little bit of a chat. And scientists, we are very visual, and there's bar charts and pie charts, and we're showing pictures and there's blobs, and we get very excited about the green blob, and people are going, I have no idea what that green blob means, but that's wonderful that you're excited about it. But that's not really, that's us communicating to other researchers. And so that was a really scary bit, to try to push us to think about, but can you make this more to draw other people in? And so there's a nice mix in there that you'll see that some of them are actual research outputs and experiment and experimental results and things. I actually went for the idea of, just because the flies have been so useful to me, and I am very grateful for the fruit flies, for what we've been able to do with them. And honestly, one of the key things I get is people kind of looking at me going, do flies have brains? Flies are so other. So my piece is just a little diagram of a fly and a person, but you can see their brain and their nervous system done out, just to make the point, we have that. So we did that repeating kind of motif over and over again. And actually, that the repeated nature of it as well, I thought was really nice, and it works really well in terms of trying to show that there's common thread, there's commonalities between flies and humans, albeit it's small, but it's there. So that was something we struggled with. Lorna helped us, and the outcome has been good. I didn't go into it with any artistic expectations. But I like where it's got to.
Yes, well, collectively, you've made a piece that does represent a piece of art, because the exhibition's divided up into different kind of categories, if you will. And the researcher's wall is items of cloth. Some of them are prints of what you would see looking on a slide under a microscope. And as you said, your one actually stood out to me because it is this fly print.
Yeah. Yes, but did you... It is a scary fly because it's quite big, right? Compared to, it's like kind of human size. We toyed around with a few different things, and I knew that others were showing results, and so I wanted to do something a little bit different. Yeah. And to get the ball rolling, it's really common. We had a couple of the women's groups come to the university, and when we were asking them kind of what labs did they want to go, we were given little blurbs about what we do and which lab did they want to go to, and no one wanted to go to the fly lab. They had these ideas, I think, that they'd open the door and they'd just be like hordes of flies everywhere. Very much Jeff Goldblum type of situation. So we'd always be unwillingly dragging them along. And then the reality of, they're very contained and it's all very good. And we were showing them that actually doing, so bless out some PhD students there, because the flies are excellent. Doing neurosurgery on a fruit fly, very challenging. So was showing, some of the PhD students were sitting there and they showed them, and some of the women were able to look in and look down the microscope and look at them. And one of the days there was this lovely Venezuelan group were there, and at the end they just spontaneously broke into applause, and out they went. And I was like, no, see, the flies are great. So it's just trying to bring some people around to that. A slightly different idea maybe. When you say to people about research models, I think people mostly think rats and mice, right? Yeah. A lab mouse is that kind of go-to idea. So just to kind of go, nope, we do something different, and it works.
You know what? I, for one, have learnt a lot about the humble, common fruit fly from this exhibition and how valuable they can actually be. We've all definitely swatted away a fruit fly at some stage, but maybe next time you might think this fruit fly could be better served being in a lab and making a difference. Stay with us, because after this, we'll be talking to yet another researcher about why she wanted to be involved in this project and why she thinks using art in this way is so important.
Encore with Patters Bar in Moat, with live music every weekend and all sport showing on our big screens. Find Patters Bar Moat on Facebook or Instagram. Midlands 103.
You are tuned into Encore on Midlands 103 to the final segment of tonight's special coverage of the Cut from the Same Cloth exhibition running in Dunamaise Arts Centre until October 25th. I recently attended the launch of the exhibition, which opened with a panel discussion with some of the people involved in the project, and one speaker in particular that stood out to me was Dr. Carol Ahern.
So, yeah, thanks for recognising that. I am very passionate about what I do, but actually I didn't feel like this project was that out of my comfort zone, because during my earlier education I loved history and stories, and I loved science. I suppose that kind of interest meant when I was looking at subjects I wanted to do in, secondary school and then university, and I was like, I really like science. And I did consider journalism actually for a brief period, but kind of went, no, I really prefer kind of the methodology or the interest in like what science really meant and how broadly it applied. So kind of just went down that road and realised that, the creativity I'd gotten from studying history and kind of enjoying stories, that kind of story is actually part of all science. There's all like a little piece of, what's the beginning information? What do I need to know more about to understand it better? And where does that go? So actually this project just kind of appealed to me in that kind of like space where I knew that I was interested in stories. And this just seemed like a really nice way to tell a story about science better. Because I do think people think science is very much, about maths and understanding very practical things, where I actually think the best scientists are the ones who come at it with a really interesting take on, what's the story here? How can I understand it better? So I felt this project just spoke to me on that level of really just letting people know that we're interested in your story and how your story could be understood better through maybe the medium of art or science. So that's kind of, it might be a long-winded answer there, but as you can see, I love to talk, but I do think it's really about communicating how science is actually, not so distant from, what people sort of maybe experience in their everyday life. And I do think, maybe going through the education systems, if it wasn't for you, then it doesn't mean that, you can't appreciate it, or, well, actually it could be for me in some way. So that's why this project was like, I think it's really nice to just educate people on how we see science, but really also learn as well, because I think it is a two-way street, and we really need to hear what people think, because you think you're doing something interesting, but people might be like, oh no, well that's not really relevant to me, or then just learn more about, this might be the way we pursue this question in a more relevant way. So yes.
And that's what this whole exhibition was about. It was to get that communication, and as you said, that two-way communication. Yeah. Because I know, as you say, from being a patient myself, sometimes it can feel like it's doctor speaks, patient listens. So it's encouraging to hear from being someone who's on the other side, that people like yourselves on that research side, that you want to hear the patient's story, and that you recognise how valuable it is to know how the patient lives day to day, and where you can be targeting your research, I suppose, or deviating it to go, we thought that we should go down this path, but after speaking with the patients, we realise we should be looking at this. So it's very nice to hear that is something that you are actively doing and that you recognise that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like just totally agree with you. And I think there's huge value in listening to each other. I think I reflected on this in different conversations, but basically, you know, we all came through an education system, as you said, like more hierarchical. You know, I'm going to tell you why this is happening, and you're going to listen to me and you're going to do what I say. And that's, you know, like that, again, not saying healthcare professions are all like that, you know, I mean, they do obviously have massively valuable experiences. But I think, and a lot of them do now have groups that they can connect you with, and it is about that community.
But you do have better outcomes when you have, as you say, that two-way communication.
Yeah. But I think, again, some of that is to do with, you know, not necessarily that patients are treated that much differently, or, you know, it's more about the community idea of, okay, this is how we can work on this together. Okay, I've learned this from this group of people, you know, we're now, you know, advising people in this direction. And then ultimately it takes some time for that to feed back up to any kind of clinical change, like, you know, drug development or anything like that. But I think it helps to refine the direction in which we will go. And ultimately the long-term goal is to help develop more refined protocols for treatment. It's quite a lengthy and protracted process, because obviously if you're going to take some sort of medication, you need it to know it's going to work and it's going to be effective, and it's also going to be safe. So I think the understanding then of like, well, why it's so long to get a newer treatment is ultimately, you know, valuable to us to be able to like explain that, but also to hear about, well, maybe this is the way the medication should be going and not like down the route the weed hole was important. Or again, symptom management might be the kind of the fundamental goal for some like kind of research project. So I really think, again, the two-way street is actually massively important, and something that we have learned from this project and others. You know, community building is really important, but it has to start somewhere. And it'd be great if people could actually find events like this to just engage with and meet people and kind of go, oh, like maybe I'll, you know, email that person and I'll pop on to something else. It doesn't have to be a big scary, like, oh, you have to come meet someone individually and, you know, we'll have a really, really intense conversation. It's, you know, we try to have like, you know, these like, so these more informal events that we're going to do, where you come along, have a cup of coffee or, you know, drink of water and just sit around, chat to people, and, you know, no pressure to, you know, to tell us your innermost details. But I suppose one final thing as well, because working in the you know, within, say, a disease area, the scientists will have heard all of these things before, and we kind of, you know, I think it's a safe space that people can talk about symptoms and not, you know, I hope they feel encouraged to do so, because we're not going to be judgmental of that, because we know about this. And I do think that people feel judgment about symptoms and, you know, how they're feeling and trying to hide, you know, or to manage in the world that we live in, and that can be really, really challenging. So I do think it's important to know that we really like to talk about your disease. I love to talk to people with the lived experience. It sounds really like macabre, but it's not. It's like really interested going, well, what's your experience being, you know, what's your disease course like, you know, how is, you know, like, does this affect your family, like, you know, like just to know about you, so we can kind of think, well, maybe, you know, as a group of people, this is the way, you know, we should be going in terms of our research, like investment of our time and, you know, our resources into, well, this particular challenge. But we wouldn't know that if we just rely on kind of pure scientific investigation. So we do need people to tell us. But it is about getting started, and I do think it's far hard for people to know where to get started. So it's kind of looking out for any of these, you know, advertised events or something. Yes. You'll not be judged for coming along, and people will be really excited to chat to you. So I think that's, people are like, oh no, not me. And I think our Irish people, our culture is generally doesn't like the spotlight, but it's not about the spotlight, it's about having a nice chat. So I think if we all appreciate a nice chat. So that's what I think, if, you know, the more we kind of do this, more people sort of know that, oh, it's just a nice chat, and they don't feel so like, oh, it's going to be scary. And you know, like, and you can always bring a friend as well, like, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, a family member, it can be anybody, just come along with you, and you can just chat to your friend, you'll you know, have experienced it. So I think it's, again, I couldn't say anything but positive things about it.
And what are you going to do out of this? What are you taking from this?
That is a really good question, and like taking so much, but practically I've thought about that a lot, and what am I going to do? So I'm taking from it actually, and one thing that was mentioned as well by others is that how brave the people who came out of their comfort zone to come and meet with us, hugely respectful of their willingness to engage. So I think just told me fundamentally that people are brave, and that was like just a nice human learning from that. Practically what I'm going to do actually, and what we have in UCD and through the Conway is that we work in these public patient engagement activities and involvement activities. So they're quite strong on that in the area of cancer, and we're developing one in the area of inflammatory bowel disease. And so I'm going to use this kind of practical experience I have. We're actually having an event coming up in October, on October the 18th, where we've invited people with lived experience of the disease to come and just, chat to us in the university. So we're going to kind of employ a more informal environment, just kind of like we did here for the patient and for the engagement with people in the cut from the same cloth. So again, my learning was, let's, use that kind of chatting to people in a language that is not so formal, not in a kind of environment where we're delivering a lecture, but more let's just come and have a chat with a cup of coffee and let's speak about your experiences, in the hopes that people can reflect on what's going on with us, and if we're, kind of moving in a direction that, is actually helping people or that are currently experiencing the disease in Ireland. So that's practically what I'm going to do. And again, just finally for students as well, I have students that are coming to the lab to work with me for their PhDs or just shorter projects, and to really use this experience to kind of highlight to them. They come along to the events with me, so to the patient events, to get them involved. And again, it's about educating people. This is how we can do this, and giving them the experience of doing it. So to kind of educate them on, we can demystify this for ourselves, to learn more about the community, and actually ultimately it'll make you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and give you also generate passion, I think, in people for how important it is to understand these diseases better. So many learnings actually out of it, that it's been so enriching that I would love to be able to do more of this actually.
Did you ever think that art would help your work in this way, in the way that it has?
That's a really interesting question. I wouldn't, and again, I know I specified, and I still do believe science and the process of science and generating knowledge is an artistic process, because it is about a story and how how we fill in the gaps in the story to kind of see what's at the end of the rainbow. But I wouldn't class myself as in art in my mind as doing a nice drawing, and I was I was never capable of doing straight lines or anything, but I do think, as I've matured as well, art is so many things, and we kind of create these images or kind of patterns, and that, it's not inherently artistic, and I'm not, standing in front of a landscape and painting it, but I am, through the work of the people in my lab and everybody else in the institute, we are creating these images that we talk about. And so, I agree with you. I would never have connected and say, this is artistic, and I'm, I can see how art and science marry, but I do see that now. Yeah, I think it's a growing medium, so long may it continue.
And Cut from the Same Cloth will be exhibiting in Dunamaise Arts Centre in Portlaoise until the end of this month. That's October 25th, when it'll be relocated to Roscommon Arts Centre for the last leg of its tour. I would highly recommend heading down to the exhibition, and even though the incredible women behind it that you will have heard from during this evening's show won't be there themselves to navigate you through the space, thanks to modern technology and Lorna Donlon's foresight to incorporate it into her work, you can scan the QR code that's woven into the tapestry and follow it as a guide. That's all from me tonight. Up next, you have the best in American and Irish country music with Country Roads. Until next week, good night.